The following is a special documentary presentation of News 4.
Engine 26 is in service.
Suspicious powder, white powder in it.
I have a letter.
Checked old 911 where the envelope is.
Engine 23, your message.
People from Buffalo and Western New York have to stay calm. They have to stay cool. They have to be strong in this very, very difficult time.
America is shocked into a state of high alert.
After September 11th, it's not when it will happen, but when will it happen again?
Get yourself safe. Get to a safe area.
These acts of mass murder were intended to frighten our nation into chaos and retreat. But they have failed. Our country is strong.
A gathering of thousands in Niagara Square symbolizes a country in mourning, but a country united in its resolve to fight terrorism.
The terrorists can destroy steel and concrete, but they cannot destroy our spirit.
Western New York's sons and daughters are sent to fight a far-off enemy.
I knew that if I was asked that I would step forward and do it.
While the enemy seeks to poison our confidence at home.
We ordered an environmental test of our offices here in New York City. One test result was positive, indicating the possibility, the likelihood that anthrax is present.
War takes on a new face on the home front.
Rich Newberg reports. Tonight, on the home front, is Western New York prepared?
Buffalo is on high alert. In fact, every city, town, and village in America is on high alert. The threat of a biochemical attack has certainly put our nerves on edge. But in this war, knowledge is power. Knowing what we are up against and knowing that we have ways to protect ourselves. And in many ways, you may be surprised to learn that Western New York has been gearing up for this challenge for years.
Letter 15 on the air in the district.
Long before terrorism consumed our daily thoughts, firefighters trained to deal with hazardous materials responded to countless incidents in Western New York. The Niagara Frontier is third in the nation for the transport of hazardous materials through an area. While this could make us a more vulnerable target for terrorists, it has also given us some of the best trained HAZMAT team members in the country.
There's no location that is fully prepared for every type of event. But as far as prepared for the size city we are very prepared.
We're doing the research now.
Now the training is geared toward responding to a terrorist incident. In this drill, the HAZMAT team faces a lethal challenge.
A sarin gas, and there was also dynamite involved.
In this scenario, a terrorist group was supposedly working out of this building on Glenny Drive on the east side when an explosion occurred. Unlike rushing in to fight a fire, HAZMAT team members must carefully evaluate what they're up against.
We're the first line of defense. If we go rushing in there, we're going to lose more firefighters.
These types of training exercises are more frequent now because what happened on September 11th hit too close to home.
Generally, the guys realize what could happen, and it could happen anywhere. So we train a little harder, guys a little more conscientious, looking out for each other, and it's always on their mind.
Close to 100 Buffalo firefighters went down to New York City to assist in search and rescue after the terrorist attack. Their advanced training put them at the upper end of the operation in some of the most dangerous places.
We couldn't stay home. We had to come and do what we had to do.
Here they just arrived and headed for a bus going in the direction of Ground Zero. Grateful New Yorkers applauded them, but they could only imagine what they were about to experience.
From what I've heard from some guys who've been down there, it's still pretty scary down there. It's pretty dangerous, so we're going to really watch ourselves down there.
But after only a short time at Ground Zero, they were digging shoulder to shoulder with New York City firefighters.
When you were recognized as a fireman that knew their way around an emergency scene, the chiefs kind of drew to you and brought you into the inner circle of the people that were digging and working the area.
It was dangerous work in twisted steel and deep caverns. Buffalo does not have an urban search and rescue training program for the hundreds of firefighters it would take to respond to this kind of disaster here at home.
Well, right now, if something was to happen in the city, we have a small contingent, Rescue 1, and a small group would respond, but if it was something major, they would be overwhelmed very quickly.
But with Buffalo's fiscal problems escalating at an alarming rate, firefighters are just trying to hold on to what they have. They've already lost their second rescue unit to budget cuts.
The city has actually closed companies instead of thinking out of the box and reopening the company of Rescue 2 and putting money into HAZMAT and increasing the people that are trained in that area.
Fire Commissioner Cornelius Kane says limited resources have been dedicated to where the needs are greatest, and that the special training of the HAZMAT team puts Buffalo far ahead of most cities. The team is equipped to handle terrorist, chemical, nerve, and blister agents in the parts per billion range.
Now we're starting to evolve into a more technical field where this is high chemistry we're dealing with and high technology with the meters. The training issues have been enormous.
Inside the state-of-the-art HAZMAT truck, a trained firefighter can determine the nature of a chemical threat in 12 minutes.
There's 136,000 different volatile organic compounds that we can identify.
But the truck is not equipped to handle biological agents like anthrax. Samples must be taken to a lab in Albany, with precious minutes ticking away in a crisis. How well are we handling the anthrax scare? And if we should be exposed in large numbers, is our medical community prepared to meet the challenge? We'll be right back with some answers. We try to conduct business as usual in the workplace, but even at the busy Buffalo News, the anthrax threat is ever present.
Tommy, get our 4 tanks and bring them over.
One of our mailroom employees had opened a letter that had some white powder in it.
Even before the HAZMAT team arrived, the mailroom worker had removed his clothes and taken a shower. 3 employees were later given antibiotics as a precaution, and the substance was treated as if it could be anthrax.
The fire department is in there now getting the sample, triple bagging it. They'll give it to the FBI and they'll take it to the lab for sampling.
The white powder later tested negative for anthrax, but the FBI had become involved because of previous real anthrax attacks against various media outlets, including television networks and newspapers.
So we know a pattern. So you're going to treat something a little differently when you have the history that something was attacked.
A tabloid photo editor in Florida and 2 postal workers nationally have died from inhaling anthrax. Others have been infected by touching contaminated letters. Postal officials cannot guarantee that the mail is safe.
At this point in time, the mail has a potential risk.
Anybody who puts poison in mail is a terrorist.
So when a white substance was reported at Buffalo's main post office on William Street, HAZMAT crews responded there as well. It was not anthrax. The fear of anthrax has led some people to treat the sighting of any white powder or even an envelope without a return address as an emergency. And this has created a major disruption for the emergency response systems.
Buffalo Fire Department. Yes, sir. A suspicious white powder that's on the floor. She had picked up an envelope that had a powder on it. Going in the house.
It leaves the city exposed. These are specialized units that are used for extrication for automobile accidents. They're used for search and rescue in the actual structure fires. So we do deplete the city when we have these calls that we actually have to respond to.
In Buffalo, the response system had become so overtaxed that only police were sent out to first respond to phoned-in anthrax threats.
Once the police department arrives, they find out that there is some evidence of anthrax. Then we would respond and take over the incident.
Billboards like these will soon be placed all over town. Anthrax exposure concern, the headline reads, stop, think, evaluate. Symptoms, call your doctor. Suspicious substances, call 911.
People have to use good judgment. You just can't call in the FBI or the city of Buffalo and say, geez, I think this envelope looks funny, or I think this dust over here looks funny.
But while there have been no reported cases of anthrax in Western New York, local hospitals and doctors' offices are tracking any trends of flu-like symptoms on a mass scale. They might be the first to detect any real terrorist threat to public health.
A terrorist probably would not announce that they've released an agent. And so over a few days, patients would start to develop symptoms and they would present to their physicians or perhaps to hospital emergency departments. So the first responders in a bioterrorist event is the healthcare system.
To prepare for the worst, the White House announced a deal to buy 100 million doses of anthrax-fighting Cipro antibiotic at reduced prices. And on huge pallets like these, the government will ship out the drug wherever the need might arise.
The federal government actually has hidden throughout the country push packs. Basically, these are large quantities of medications, equipment, supplies, ventilators, things that can be readily loaded onto an airplane or onto vehicles and deployed. And their goal is to reach the destination within 12 hours of the time of request.
Anthrax is spread through spore-forming bacteria. Finely ground anthrax whipped into the air can be fatal in high concentrations. Exposure through skin contact is generally not as serious.
The skin form of it, which is more common and which is how most people who handle farm animals and get it the normal way, the natural way, is very treatable and has a fairly low mortality to it, even when not treated.
Let's put it on the side and isolate it.
Many companies in Western New York are taking steps to protect their workers and issuing guidelines on what to do if they become exposed to an unknown substance. At the Buffalo News during the anthrax scare, the staff got high marks for following directions.
Right by the book, they did an outstanding job.
There was nothing approaching panic here. The people went about their jobs. They felt that the company had taken good precautions.
Out on the streets, we are presenting a united front, trying to put our fears in perspective. Joanne Vecchio, a mother of a 4-year-old, is constantly concerned about anthrax, but refuses to be paralyzed with fear.
You can't put yourself in a plastic bubble. You have to just go on.
It's like a white substance on our mailbox, and I don't know if you could send a HAZMAT or that team over to 1200 William. Where should they answer?
Stand by, execute.
They look like they could be part of the Army's elite special forces.
Badger surge!
But they are Erie County Sheriff's deputies, part of the SWAT team, practicing maneuvers that could someday be targeting a terrorist hideout on the home front.
Alpha team to team leader, the room is clear and secure. We are coming out.
We train hard, and this way when we get into a situation, we're going to react as we train.
This is the first look at training exercises on the new $4 million SWAT range in the town of Alden, a 5-acre state-of-the-art staging area for maneuvers geared to take out terrorist or criminal targets before they can target us.
Preparation is a key to any effective response in any type of emergency at all, and now that we're facing the terrorist attacks and other things with anthrax and things like that that we've seen in the United States, we have to do whatever we can to be effectively prepared.
Meeting the terrorist threat means sharpening skills. Seconds count when innocent people are counting on these experts to save their lives.
Normally when we fire, if we have the shot, we'll shoot right here. And this is an area which would strike the medulla in the brain, and it would stop all reflexes. So in a possibility where we have a terrorist situation or a hostage situation where the individual is killing people, we have to respond, and we have to respond quickly and professionally.
During those horrifying moments of the terrorist attacks on September 11th, Western New Yorkers shared in the anxiety that their own security was suddenly in question.
I think we have to be and go under the assumption that everybody and anybody could be a target in this country as well as any U.S. citizen overseas.
There was an immediate police presence on Buffalo city streets. The Federal Building and later City Hall were closed. So was the airport. The terrorist hijackings focused attention on security at our airports, and security now is at its highest level.
Let both of them through.
Cars on their way to short-term parking are searched because part of the ramp is within 300 feet of the terminal. The FAA had first ordered this area closed.
And basically it's because of bombs, explosive things of that nature. They feel basically outside of 300 feet it certainly lessens the impact that it would have on the terminal. So we want to make sure that any cars parking within that perimeter are clean.
The number of NFTA police officers on site went from 5 to 12 per shift. They patrol the airport and the surrounding property.
May I have your attention?
An armed National Guardsman is also on patrol inside the terminal security zone, and not too many people are complaining.
I liked seeing the National Guard in view, and their expressions, and they're so professional in what they're doing and take it seriously.
There's more screening of baggage before the gate, and screeners are hoping for more training and better salaries and benefits. They start at $7 an hour.
I look at it that every person that comes through me, I got their life in my hands.
Looking at the big picture, security has gotten tighter at our border crossings with Canada. Security alerts are in effect at the Niagara Power Project and the Air Reserve Base in the Falls. And our water supply, including wells, will be monitored in new local labs that will also have the capability to test for anthrax.
Timing is of the essence when we're talking about these issues. And so we want to have the ability to get it to a laboratory as quickly as possible so the testing can begin and we have some preliminary results within 12 to 24 hours.
All this as the president signed new legislation giving law enforcement sweeping new power to fight terrorism.
We will always have to balance the security with the civil liberties. Although so many people right now have put our country first, and so many people have indicated that they're willing to give up some of their civil liberties in order to provide the security, the safety for their families, and to protect our democracy.
The day was September 8th at the Buffalo Airport, a disaster drill testing plans to deal with a terrorist incident.
Well, we had an airplane that we were notified about 9 o'clock this morning that had a bomb on board along with a biological agent.
In the drill, the agent was anthrax. 3 days later, the real nightmare began. The timing was tragically ironic, but it underscores the fact that disaster plans for our area have been in the making for years, preparing us for all sorts of crises. The countdown to the new millennium brought fears we would suddenly be thrust into darkness and lose the ability to communicate. A command center had been set up to deal with the potential Y2K computer disaster.
With our emergency operating center, we had backup communications, and we also had backup power, electrical generation power.
We were not always ahead of the game. Sometimes we had to learn from our mistakes. Wrong decisions were made when the great storm of 2000 hit us hard.
All of Buffalo can't leave to go to the suburbs at the same time, and that we need to evacuate our buildings strategically.
Everyone have to leave, I'm sorry.
City Hall was evacuated in 10 minutes in this drill, a little more than a week after the terrorist attacks. Those who have devoted years to disaster planning paid close attention to detail. They are the ones we must trust with our lives.
There are no fallout shelters. You'll have to depend on what we put in place in emergency management to deal with it.
But here's what you can do to protect yourself, your family, and your fellow workers. The FBI advises that if you receive a suspicious-looking package, handle it with care. Don't shake or bump it. Isolate the package or envelope and look for indicators, such as no return address or misspelled words. Don't open it or smell or taste the contents, and treat it as suspect. Call 911. Emergency response teams in Western New York believe they have earned our trust. Some have even set the standards for other regions to follow. Planning for what was once the unthinkable is now planning for our very survival on the home front. Western New York has weathered many storms, testing our ability to resist and endure. Our state of preparedness is in many ways related to our state of mind. Ultimately, the true test may be in how much trust we place in ourselves and in our systems of defense. I'm Rich Newberg. Good night.
There is no finer hazmat response vehicle in North America at this time.
We have plans. We have people that are trained to the level to deal with what's out there.
Adequate preparation is necessary to an effective response, and we have prepared well locally.
This community is a strong community. It works very closely together. We pull together.